It was an absolute failure of a season for the Philadelphia 76ers from every single angle, but Andre Drummond ranks a bit higher on the list than any of us would have expected. However, we have not seen the end of Andre Drummond in Philadelphia, as the Sixers big man made it clear he intends on coming back next year. I want to break down exactly what this means for the Sixers team, why they have no say in the overall conversation, and why my good friend DJ Eastwood had a couple words with Andre specifically on Twitter there. So gonna dive into everything in this video here. We are at the stage of the offseason, starting to sort through who should stay, who should go, still waiting that fateful day of the NBA draft lottery, and let's kick off our conversation with Andre Drummond today. Now, to reflect on what he produced this season, it was not Andre Drummond's best season by any measures there. 7.3 points per game, 7.8 rebounds, 1.4 turnovers. He did have 1.0 steal, 15% from three. I will say, watching Andre Drummond shoot three-pointers in the tail end of the season became one of the more entertaining things I paid attention to during Sixers games, but just 50% from the field now. And to dive into the exact quote to set the stage here, this is what Andre said at his press conference here following the season. Andre Drummond said he has more work to do in Philadelphia. Quote, "My plan is to come back." And to give the full context of this overall quote here, this is coming from Kai Carlin of Sixers Wire. He writes, "As Drummond heads into the offseason, he does have a decision to make. He has a $5 million player option for the 25-26 season. There is a reason why he returned to Philadelphia, so at the moment, he does want to return and remain with the Sixers." Quote, "This is something I said from the first day I got back here," Drummond stated on his future. "I feel like there's more work to the stuff that's missing that I haven't completed here yet, which is winning at the highest level, and I still feel that way. I think we still have the pieces to win at the highest level, and I think I can be a big part of that too. So my plan is to come back, but obviously whatever happens in the offseason happens, but our immediate plan is to be back here." So this is kind of the full quotes here, but our guy DJ Eastwood did ultimately see that quote from Sixers Adem here and responded to it, "Please don't," at Andre Drummond, which Drummond replied, "Damn," with a little crying face. And this continued on for one more, which Eastwood said, "Nothing personal, big dog. You just look pretty washed and couldn't stop my 9-year-old at the rim. All love." To which Andre Drummond replies, "Probably not. Been hurt all season, but all good. Watch how I come back," with a little prayers emoji here. For starters, shout out to Andre for taking it like a champ, man. I do think, like, at his core, he's a very good human being and a guy who genuinely loves being in Philadelphia, which I do respect and do give him credit for. With that said here, I do get DJ's points that we can't look at this and be honest and think that Drummond is the guy that is for sure the answer at the big man position next year. Now, what happened with these injuries that he's referring to here is we did see the pathway paved for Adem Bona. That is a huge part of this overall story, and to kind of reflect on what Bona did as a starter during the tail end of the season. 14.8 points per game, 8.3 rebounds, 2.6 blocks per game, led the entire NBA over the final 2 months of the season in blocks, 1 assist, 75.6% from the field, 60% from the free throw line, and I think he revealed more layers to his game than I honestly thought he had here, that we knew he was sort of this in this box traditional center, the Clint Capella archetype that can, catch lobs, block shots, rebound at a high level, is all energy all the time, but there's a little more to him than that. That little fake dribble or fake handoff and then attack the rim himself, a little bit of playmaking. The jump shot, to my eyes, looks pretty good. I get the numbers aren't quite there yet, but for a rookie, a guy that is, obviously playing through the newness of this entire situation here, I thought he handled himself really well down the stretch, and there is an energy level and an effort level that I think is pretty infectious. That does motivate me. Now, when having this conversation about the center, our outlook has changed entirely, and that all comes down to Joel Embiid. If we were talking about a situation where we for sure knew this Sixers organization got the version of Joel Embiid that we've seen for the past decade, I would be completely satisfied with walking it back with Andre Drummond and Adem Bona. Unfortunately, that just is not the case there. And to reflect on what Embiid brought to the table this year from a pure production standpoint, the numbers speak for themselves. 23.8 points per game, 8.2 rebounds, 4.5 assists, shot 44.4% from the field, and 29.9% from three. Now, by your general NBA player standards, those aren't horrible numbers by any means, but that's not a guy who was scoring 70 points in a game less than a calendar year ago. A guy that lit up the New York Knicks for 50 points in a playoff game less than a calendar year ago. And just from the eye test, watching him move out there, it wasn't the Joel Embiid that we have come to know. Now, he's already been under the knife this offseason. There is another surgery that has gone down on that knee. We can squint and look at it and certainly are hoping for the case that he can bounce back to the 100% version of himself. I also think it's kind of naive to operate with that being the sole belief. Now, from the Sixers standpoint here, I get you have no choice but to operate with that regard, and that is certainly the best case scenario once again. but you also got to plan for the worst case scenario. And I don't think they've done quite a good enough job of that in the overall standpoint here. Now, for Andre Drummond specifically here, none of this fully impacts him. But I think for Drummond, he's locked in that I know what my contract is, I know what my value on the open market, and I'm not getting more than $5 million if I were to hit free agency again. If he was just to decline that player option, which by the way, to pull up the salary cap here and give kind of a clear indication, you see Kelly Oubre Jr. at the top, also on a player option, and I know you guys probably all know this already, but a player option obviously meaning it is the player's decision there. They get to choose whether they're opting into that season or not. There's also team options, none that are currently popping up there. We do see the restricted free agent for Quentin Grimes, and what that means exactly is that these Sixers have a chance to match whatever offer is sent his way there. No team options up here currently. Eric Gordon, another guy on a player option, which isn't the best situation there. I have no clue really what happens there, but Drummond is the guy that we're talking about in this video. I do think he looks at it as that is my value or what I'm directly tied to right here. I'm not getting that if I were to opt out of it. So I'm taking the money. I'm staying here. And again, I do think he likes being in Philadelphia. Now, to be completely optimistic and open-minded for Andre here, I do think there's a world where he was playing through injury and not the best version of himself last year. And I am optimistic that that can be a better Andre Drummond coming next year. But that is also operating with a whole lot of optimism here. By the way, the toe injury that he dealt with, I do want to point out that this all started during that madness of the Spurs game where he was ejected and then brought back into the game, where Joel got kicked out after arguing with the female official. It was a whole mess, that entire game here. But Drummond specifically injured that toe by kicking, I don't know, I forget if it was a tunnel or the wall or whatever the case was be when he was ejected there. That was the first time that he popped off an injury report, was immediately after that. I believe it was during that game actually for it. But nonetheless, I get being frustrated. I was mad at the time too, so I'm not holding that too much to Andre, but there are some difficult decisions here. Now, why this is difficult from a Sixers perspective, it is the lack of control. And this is the risk that you run when you are Daryl Morey and you do hand out these player options for guys like Eric Gordon, like Andre Drummond. If it is the worst case scenario and Daryl Morey and the rest of the Sixers front office are sitting there saying there's no world in which Andre Drummond can provide value to this franchise, you still can trade him. You have that to go off. And I don't think there would be zero takers for Andre Drummond. This guy is not an NBA player at this point in his career. He just isn't what he once was. And my fear is I kind of think he's not a guy that, while the optimism or the optimistic view of bringing him in is he is a guy that can scale up and fill that starting center role when Joel's not there. I'm not sure if I have the same level of confidence as I initially did at this time last year. Drummond is a guy who likes being in Philadelphia. Everyone seems to love him. I give him a lot of credit for the way that he carries himself in the locker room, his treatment of young players, even with Adem Bona, how highly Bona spoke about his interactions with Drummond there. But none of that sort of makes up for the on-court production, and that's what every single decision has to be made on moving forward. That for the Sixers specifically, they have to be locked in on every single roster spot is used to maximize this team. I think they've fallen short in that category in years past with guys that are, either keeping an open roster spot or players that you're hopeful for the future or guys that are not helping this team win currently. That's a mistake that they cannot repeat, and I do have some concern that they might head down that path. It will not be the end of the world if Andre Drummond is back on the Sixers team next year, but I can't have the only option of him being the guy behind Joel Embiid with maybe Adem Bona taking that next leap. I don't think Bona is quite ready to overtake Drummond as that starting caliber center next year, although I am plenty optimistic for what he can bring in the long haul for this Sixers team. But ultimately, do want to hear from you guys in the comments here. What is your feeling on Andre Drummond, and where are you at as far as an optimism level? Am I being too low on him? Could he have a complete bounce back season? Or do you want no part of him whatsoever? Drop those in the comments below. As always, appreciate each and every one of you guys tuning into this video. Make sure you hit that subscribe button if you have not already. Drop a like on this video. It is off-season time, and it is time to get to work, figure out how this roster is reshaping and being all over things from start to finish. So want as many people rock with me as possible. Hit that button, drop a like, and I'll be back to talk with you next time. Peace.